The morning at the sanctuary began like any other, until Elias heard the cry. A baby gorilla, pressed against the glass, was begging him to follow. At first, it looked like panic. But when Elias stepped inside the enclosure, he realized this wasn't just noise. The baby was pointing to something the cameras couldn't see, something that would test every ounce of trust he had built with the troop. "Stay with us, because this baby gorilla's desperate plea will uncover a lesson about survival, trust, and love that no one was prepared to face." This particular morning, however, a discordant note pierced the familiar harmony. It was a cry. High-pitched, frantic, and filled with a kind of primal terror that chilled Elias to the bone. He knew the troop's vocalizations as well as he knew his own name. This wasn't the playful shriek of a game or the grumpy complaint of being denied a piece of fruit. This was a scream for help. Elias grabbed his radio and hurried towards the sprawling gorilla enclosure, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The enclosure was a masterpiece of habitat design, a lush expanse of rolling hills, dense foliage, a cascading waterfall, and massive, craggy rock formations designed to mimic their native environment. It was so large and complex that an animal could easily disappear from view. As he reached the observation point, his eyes scanned the area. He saw Jabari, the 450-pound silverback, pacing near the center of the habitat, his knuckles drumming a restless beat on the ground. His sheer presence was a thundercloud of anxiety. But it was Kibbo who drew Elias's attention. The 2-year-old gorilla was clinging to the thick, reinforced glass of the viewing area, his tiny hands pressed flat against the barrier. Tears, real tears, streamed from his wide, intelligent brown eyes, leaving wet tracks in his dark fur. He was looking directly at Elias, and the sound that ripped from his small chest was gut-wrenching. He would let out a series of desperate chirps and cries, then bang his small fist against the glass, not with aggression, but with an unmistakable urgency. He was begging. "What is it, little man?" Elias murmured, his voice soft. He put his own hand up to the glass, mirroring Kibbo's. Kibbo cried again, then did something extraordinary. He dropped from the glass, ran a few paces towards a dense, rocky outcrop on the far side of the enclosure, then turned back, looking straight at Elias. He pointed with his whole arm, a clear, unambiguous gesture, and let out another pleading wail. Then he repeated the action, running back to the glass, crying, and gesturing wildly towards the rocks. He wanted Elias to follow. Elias's mind raced. Standard procedure was clear: never enter a great ape enclosure alone, especially when the animals are agitated. A distressed silverback like Jabari could kill a man with a single, furious swipe. He keyed his radio. "Sarah, Mark, I've got a situation at the gorilla enclosure. Kibbo is highly distressed. Zola is not visible. I need eyes on the West Ridge camera, now." A crackle came back. "Copy, Elias. Pulling it up. It's obscured. The foliage is too thick after last night's storm. Can't see a thing back there." Kibbo was becoming more frantic. He started running back and forth along the glass, his cries growing hoarse. He was a child trying to tell the only adult he trusted that something was terribly wrong. Every instinct in Elias's body, honed over 3 decades of working with these magnificent creatures, screamed that this was a life-or-death situation. Protocol was a shield, designed to protect staff. But sometimes, a shield just gets in the way. He made a decision. It was reckless, against every rule in the book, and could cost him his job, or his life. "Mark, I'm going in," he said into the radio, his voice firm. "Negative, Elias. Wait for the response team." "We're 5 minutes out," the voice on the other end yelled. "There isn't 5 minutes," Elias said, switching the radio off. He would not be talked out of this. He moved to the keeper's access gate, his hands working the complex series of locks with practiced ease. The moment the heavy steel door clicked open, a hush fell over the enclosure. Jabari stopped pacing. The massive silverback turned, his dark eyes locking onto Elias. He let out a low, rumbling growl, a clear warning. This was the most dangerous moment. Elias knew he couldn't show fear or aggression. He made himself small, averting his gaze to show respect and submission. He made a soft, guttural sound, a vocalization of calm reassurance he had used with Jabari for years. He held out his empty hands, palms up, to show he was no threat. Jabari watched him, his brow furrowed, his incredible intelligence processing the scene. He saw the human he knew, the one who brought food and enrichment, the one who had never shown him harm. He saw the distress of his own son, Kibo, who was now running towards Elias, not away from him. The silverback stood his ground but remained silent, a tense, powerful statue of wary permission. He was allowing this intrusion. Kibo reached Elias and tugged frantically at his pant leg, pulling him forward. "Okay, little man, I'm coming." "Show me," Elias whispered, his heart feeling like it would burst from his chest. The little gorilla led him away from the main clearing and towards the rocky outcrop he had pointed to earlier. The ground was slick from the previous night's torrential rainstorm, and the air was thick with the smell of damp earth and wet leaves. As they rounded a massive boulder, Elias saw it. And his blood ran cold. Zola, the matriarch, was trapped. A section of the rock formation, likely destabilized by the storm, had shifted. A heavy, granite slab had slid down, pinning her left arm in a crevice near the base. She was lying on her side, her face pale, her breathing shallow. Her eyes were glazed with pain and exhaustion. She was losing her fight. Elias immediately saw the problem. The rock was immense, weighing at least half a ton. There was no way he could move it alone. The emergency team would have to tranquilize Jabari to get close, then use heavy equipment. It would take 20, maybe 30 minutes. Zola didn't look like she had that long. Her arm was already swelling to a terrifying size, the circulation clearly cut off. As Elias's mind reeled, he felt a colossal presence behind him. Jabari had followed. The silverback stood over them, his scent filling the air, a mixture of musk and rain. He looked at the trapped Zola, then at Elias, and let out a soft, mournful grunt. It wasn't a threat, it was a sound of despair. In that moment, Elias understood. The line between human and ape, between keeper and kept, evaporated. They were simply two males, of two different species, facing the imminent loss of a female they both cared for. And then Elias did the unthinkable. He looked directly into Jabari's eyes, a gesture that, in the gorilla world, is a profound challenge. But Elias didn't project aggression. He projected desperation, a plea. "Jabari," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "I need your help. We have to help her." He pointed at the massive rock pinning Zola's arm. Then he pointed at the silverback's powerful, muscular arms. He pushed against the rock himself, grunting with effort to demonstrate his intention, to show the futility of his own strength. Jabari watched, his head cocked. His gaze shifted from Elias, to Zola's trapped arm, to the rock. The complexity of his thoughts was almost visible, a storm of instinct, intelligence, and emotion swirling behind his deep-set eyes. He understood the gesture. He understood the problem. Elias found a large, fallen tree branch, thick as his thigh, and tried to wedge it into a gap beneath the rock slab, hoping to use it as a lever. It was a pathetic attempt, but it was all he had. He strained, his muscles screaming, the wood groaning. The rock didn't budge an inch. Suddenly, a huge, black-furred hand, its knuckles scarred from a lifetime of walking and asserting dominance, closed around the end of the same branch. Jabari had joined him. The silverback wrapped his other arm around a stable part of the main rock formation for anchorage. "Okay, big guy," Elias breathed, his voice trembling with a mixture of terror and awe. "Okay. On my signal. Push. Push with me." Elias looked at Jabari, nodded once, and then threw his entire weight against the lever. At the exact same moment, Jabari let out a deafening roar of pure effort and heaved. The power was biblical. The muscles on Jabari's back and shoulders bunched into mountains of solid force. The ground trembled. The log groaned, threatening to snap, but it held. For a heart-stopping second, nothing happened. Then, with a deep, grinding screech of stone against stone, the massive slab began to move. Again. Elias yelled, resetting the lever. They pushed again, a synchronized, desperate, interspecies team. The rock shifted another inch. Zola let out a weak moan and tried to pull her arm. One more time, Jabari. One more good one. For the third time, they combined their strength. Elias's world narrowed to the straining wood, the smell of the gorilla beside him, and the singular goal of freeing Zola. This time, the rock moved a full 6 inches, opening just enough of a gap. With a final, pained whimper, Zola wrenched her arm free. She collapsed onto the damp ground, immediately cradling her mangled limb. Kibo rushed to her side, clinging to her back and chittering with relief. Elias stumbled backwards, his legs turning to water, and fell into a sitting position. He stared, utterly breathless, at what had just happened. Beside him, Jabari stood panting, his massive chest heaving. The great ape looked down at the now conscious Zola, then turned his head and looked at Elias. There was no aggression in his gaze. No threat. There was only a deep, profound, and clear expression of understanding. He held Elias's gaze for a long moment, and in that shared silence, a bond that had taken 27 years to build was forged into something unbreakable. Jabari gave a short, soft grunt, a sound of acknowledgement, of thanks, before turning to gently nudge Zola, checking on his mate. It was then that the sanctuary's response team, armed with tranquilizer rifles and emergency gear, burst through the foliage. They stopped dead in their tracks, taking in the impossible scene, Elias sitting on the ground, unharmed, mere feet from the entire gorilla family, who were now huddled together, tending to their own. In the aftermath, Elias Vance became a legend. He had broken every conceivable rule. He had risked his life based on the pleas of a baby gorilla. He had entered an enclosure with an agitated silverback. And, most unbelievably of all, he had worked side by side with that same 450-pound animal to perform a rescue. He wasn't fired. On the contrary, after a lengthy review where the full scope of his bravery and the depth of his relationship with the troop became clear, he was celebrated. Zola's arm, though badly damaged, was saved by the veterinary team. Had they waited for the response crew, she would have lost it, or worse, succumbed to shock and trauma. From that day on, something was different. The bond between Elias and the gorilla troop transcended the normal keeper-animal dynamic. Whenever Elias approached the enclosure, Jabari would often come to the edge, not with a display of dominance, but with a quiet look of recognition. He would sit, watching the man who had helped him save his family. Elias knew he had witnessed something few humans ever will, proof that the capacity for empathy, intelligence, and cooperation is not solely our own. He had gambled his life on the desperate cries of a baby, and in doing so, had participated in an act of trust so profound, it was, by all accounts, truly unthinkable.